Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome to the celebration and launch for the 31st issue of Catamaran, which just came out December 1st. And here it is. Ta-da! My name is Catherine Segerson, and I am the editor-in-chief of this pretty magazine. And this issue's cover is by Kaora Mansauer. It's a beautiful mixed media, very wintry. And we also have a lot of fine art in this issue if you haven't seen it yet. We pay homage to Robert Bechtel, a longtime Bay Area painter who passed away just this fall. We have some lovely ocean landscape paintings by local artist Frank Galuska, who is a professor here at UCSC. And we have also some beautiful tide pools by Virginia Draper. But tonight we are bringing you readers from the poetry and prose featured in this issue. I'm just seeing if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Other people can hear me. Okay. So tonight we have we are bringing you 18 readers. So, okay, we're bringing you 18 readers. So that's the most. Thank you, everyone. That is the most we've ever had at a launch event, and while it's hard to do these events virtually, we don't get the chance to mingle and get to know the poets and authors. We are able to feature people from outside the area. There's people here from the East Coast reading tonight. So that's kind of been fun and exciting. So don't worry, it's not going to go on for 3 or 4 hours. We're giving each person a short time to read. The poets will be reading 2 poems, and our prose authors will be reading a few paragraphs. And so tonight will be more about the whole. So the sum of the parts. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It will be about just a feel for poets and authors among us, and a flavor for how they all come together in this magazine. And many have books out there, so you can go and find their books for the holidays. And you can also buy the winter issue tonight if you'd like to read the full story or to read the whole magazine. And that's with this button, buy the winter issue. Just click on that, and that will put you through to our store. And a few other mechanics. So we have a chat. Everybody who's attending tonight can chat. And I like to keep the chat to commenting on the readings. So if you hear something you like, or you just want to comment on a poem, feel free to use the chat for that. Everybody can see the chat. If you have a technical question and you can't do your audio or sound, or something's going wrong, there's a little ask the question button. So use that, because that will go directly to us, and we can try to troubleshoot your technical issues there. Okay. And yeah. So we're not NBC, there's going to be technical problems. We're trying to work with 18 different setups and some software, but it should be fun. Everyone is so interesting that's going to be reading tonight, so I'm looking forward to it. And I'm just grateful that we're able to publish all 4 issues this year. We've made it almost to the finish line of 2020 with our 4th quarterly issue for 2020, the Catamaran's winter issue. I just want to thank everybody that supported us this year. My board of directors have been wonderful. Donors have been coming through to help us make it, volunteers, and also our readers who have really been enjoying the publications in lockdown, I guess. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first poet. Okay. I've got to, we reordered this. Is Judy Brackett. Judy Brackett lives in a small town in the California foothills of the northern Sierra Nevada. She's a member of Community of Writers. Her poems have appeared in Epic, The Maine Review, Commonweal, Miramar, Subtropics, Crab Orchard Review, and elsewhere. Her poetry chapbook, Flatwater, Nebraska Poems, was published by Finishing Line Press in 2019. So we'll please welcome Judy Brackett.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. My poem in this beautiful magazine is called The Places Between. The two lived for years in a house with no walls, in a valley between sea and mountain. If they climbed the mountain, not a very high one, they could see the sea, though they rarely made the effort, just endured those years between drifts of salt air and mountaintop clouds, between light and dark, mostly in shade, between love and not love. Among owls and the occasional gull, a lone brown bear, hawks and wild turkeys, mouse-tailed bats hanging and swooping. There were occasional dogs, near feral cats. There was never a child. Recluses, soulmates of a sort, even though they'd forsworn the idea of soul. They nodded to their few neighbors, likewise hermitic, on rare trips to the village around the dark mountain. Days, weeks passed without words as they watched the clouds and breathed dank, briny air. They made austere art from bark, wildflowers, bird and animal teeth and bones, red clay. Delicate pieces only the two of them would ever see. Made it, moved it from inside to outside, then buried it along with the others. And my next poem, At the End of the Day, I'll just say a little bit about this. There's a reference later to Lewy bodies. And if you don't know, Lewy bodies are an abnormal buildup of proteins in certain brain cells present in people with Parkinson's and dementia. At the end of the day, because I could not stop for air, I learned that someone there is that doesn't love birdsong. Even though I live in a pretty how town, there's a fire somewhere else not far from here, or will be. And even though on the porch railing there's sun tea brewing as gold as the runaway St. John's wort that strangled the wild clematis, I know that articulated buses in Seattle are still taking the corners like ambling geriatric caterpillars. And the boy at the inn in Tosco is still sweeping the dirt and watching the revolving flirty young girls. And the green piñata spills broccolini, sugar peas, and organic grapes on the baby's tears. And the two-trunked oak threatens to split, to send its wider leg crashing into the copse of native dogwood. And day after day, the water's edge warns and invites. When the robot neurologist via video asks the patient to raise his arms, his right leg, his left leg, the patient cannot. And I picture Lewy bodies as other planets, other stars that died dark years ago. At the end of the day, I go to sleep except when I don't. And last night, star jasmine and linden blossom sweetened the air as one airplane, red lights pulsing, and one satellite sailed north by northeast on the open sky road. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. That was really beautiful. That was Judy Brackett. Our next poet is Dion O'Reilly. Dion O'Reilly's first book, Ghost Dogs, was published in February 2020 by Terrapin Books. Her work appears in Poetry Daily, Verse Daily, Narrative, New Ohio Review, the Massachusetts Review, New Letters, Sugar House Review, Rattled, The Sun, and other literary journals and anthologies. Her poetry has been nominated for several Pushcart Prizes and has been shortlisted for a variety of other awards. She's a member of the Hive Poetry Collective, which produces podcasts and events, and she teaches ongoing workshops on a farm in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I'm going to now invite Dion onto the screen. So it might take a minute. For Dion to come join us.
All right. I guess I'm on, right?
You're on.
Okay. I think there's 83 people. I'm so grateful that 83 people are listening to poetry and prose tonight. So thank you for listening. This first poem I'm going to read is from the Catamaran Quarterly. And I didn't know why I wrote it when I wrote it. But now in Shelter in Place, it all makes sense in the way that poetry can sometimes be very prophetic. Let the world be unshackled and greedy. Let sugar split plums be eaten by crows. Let our eyes understand the moon as rib bone, a single star, a scorpion's heart. Let dragonflies the size of gliders link in flight, unzip the air. Let summer turn to emptiness, the world shift its skin, bridges relent, spines of cities arch in the heat, melt and weld to black dirt. Let the Pacific lose itself to mist, fall in thick veils, the sky red as a radish. After 6 million years, let's return to our hiding place. Terror, once again, our worship. Loneliness, our first word for God. Okay, this next poem is about when I lived in Seattle in the 70s and 80s, and I'm just reading it tonight because it's kind of a new poem, so I'm in love with it. And also, Catamaran is about the West Coast and poetry of the West Coast, so here we go. Seattle Freeze, 1978. I walked the Ave with it tucked in my raincoat. The paperback Yeats, bought at a secondhand bookstore on Northeast 42nd, with an occult name like The Alchemist or Dark Magician. I carried it like a stone tablet back to my tribe of one, studied it in the smoke-filled coffee shop full of young men moving chess pieces in the precise way of surgeons intent on someone else's heart. I sat in a pew that faced a wall, inscribed with lovers' names and anarchy signs. At my feet, blue bottle flies face up like chips of bornite crystal. The barista was a beautiful, unhappy woman. Everyone was in thrall of her long black hair and sullen eyes. One man with skin masses on his nose like a Ghirlandaio handed her fancy cut paper snowflakes. After he left, she placed them on saucers under grandes, which I drank one after the other, sticks, dark, bitter, and burning, fraying my nervous system and making me needy. Car tires slapped rain in the street through the darkening afternoons as I copied words in my journal. All changed utterly. I wanted to meet someone who liked my legs and listened to me. Instead, I went to dinner alone in one of those 70s diners with tahini dressing and grainy rolls, the radiant, pregnant waitresses carrying beans and soup like doulas attending my sorrow. Seattle seemed full of Nordic stock and Midwest transplants, more robust than I and saner. I was California bred, stupid as an umbrella. How strange it all seems now, those heavy days. Store windows piled high with antiques no one bought, the shopkeepers who let me have what I wanted for nothing, deco frames, stereoscopes, scimitars. I think they must have been lonely, or maybe they loved the bluish, sun-starved skin beneath my eyes. I was afraid to go back to my attic room, books stacked in the corner, brown pennies discarded in jars, my clothes, too many for the closet, just warm weather cottons, and the whole world silent and cold. Okay, everyone, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catamaran.
Oh, thank you, Dion. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth McKenzie. I'm the managing editor of Catamaran. And it's really great to see so many of you were able to join us this evening. I'm going to now introduce Gary Lark. Gary Lark's most recent collection is Daybreak on the Water. Other work includes Ordinary Gravity, River of Solace in the House of Memory, Without a Map, and Getting By. Easter Creek is forthcoming from Main Street Rag. So please welcome Gary Lark.
Hi, I'm glad to be here, and thank you for putting together this beautiful magazine. My poem from Catamaran is Yellow Boat. I grew up in the 1950s in the Umpqua Valley of Southern Oregon, and so it's set at that time in the 50s, Yellow Boat. The skeletons were pieced together in Dale's backyard, twin boats, modified V-bottom, Chris-Craft pattern, built on weekends or after work, thin plywood on fir ribs, the oak strips steamed in irrigation pipe, fit to a mold for the keel or gunnels, fiberglass laid on the plywood, painted and painted again, yellow and black. Not one of those runabouts you see in the movies. These were fishing boats, Goodwins for the river or bay. It sat in the water at the end of the road, outboard and gear left spring, summer, and into the fall. That's the way it was, and no one ever lost so much as a sinker. We fished, hunted ducks, and cruised the water below the forks for 10 years in the only, by God, lemon yellow boat on the entire Umpqua River system. Wooden boats were green and a few blue. When fiberglass and plastic came in, there were white and red. But it would take years before I saw another yellow boat, and it was towing skiers. Years later, I pondered why my mild-mannered father chose yellow. My mother cleared it up. When they were dancing to swing music in 1938, my father had a golden sash sewn in his bell-bottoms that would flash at every turn. My second poem is from my book, Daybreak on the Water, and it is Return. Sometimes I forget in the suffer of day what the night remembers running the long beaches in a rage of freedom. Moon still above the mist, pulling the endless shadow from the seas of belly. Are you bone or rock, breathing me back to water? Spindrift, curls in my hand like a sleeping word. We press our salted bodies into the tides of each other, releasing our unutterable selves. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Beautiful reading. Next, we have Carolyn Goodwin. I'm going to invite Carolyn Goodwin to join us. Oh, we have so many people here tonight. Oh, this is exciting. Okay, there, I found you. Okay. Carolyn Goodwin moved to California from Sitka, Alaska in 1999 to attend Stanford University as a Wallace Stegner Fellow in Poetry. Her recent books are The Paper Tree from Big Yes Press in 2017 and Custody of the Eyes from Dancing Girl Press in 2019. She lives and teaches in the San Francisco Bay Area. So please welcome Carolyn Goodwin. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, thank you so much I'm so pleased to be here. I hope you can hear me okay. It's good? Okay. Yeah, I'm so happy to have a poem in the beautiful Catamaran, and I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing people I've been admiring from afar for a while. You don't know, but I've been admiring you. And I'm so pleased to have this short poem, Metal, next to the beautiful art in Catamaran. So this is Metal. At dawn, I gather up your limbs. They've been scattered, of course. I search for a long while and find even the wrist bones, ankle bones, gristle, the serrated edge. And I sing at the loom, and I assemble the basket, certain you can hear me. The pattern of geese, of arrows. When the heart stops, the moon is a silver claw. The moon is a button or a coin in the mesh of gates. Certain you can hear me still. And I'll read one from my first book, Trapline. This is the first poem, and I think it's a nice companion to what we just heard. So this is Invitation. Come to the end of the wharf, when the last of the tide releases the harbor with its trollers and rigging, its lamp shells and speckled anemone. Come after work, when the mind has grown plumes, delicate as tube worms in the driftwood, in the sponge, and scarlet blood star tough as tongues, as the sea whip clicking. Here is the hornmouth and wenteltrap and chiton and quahog and cockle and wrinkle of the human knuckle, that rim inside the human eye. Here, a thin film, an eyelid, an iris surrendering its pupil. Thanks for your attention. Have a great night.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Now I'd like to introduce Chad Michael Lange. Chad Michael Lange's stories have appeared in the Tigonish Review, 14 Hills, and Ziziva. He's received residencies at MacDowell, Gentle Foundation, and the Malay Colony for the Arts, and grants from California Arts Council and Squaw Valley Community of Writers. He lives in San Francisco with a punk rock cat named Duster. Please welcome Chad Michael Lange.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Thank you to Catherine and Elizabeth for setting up the reading. And also a special shout out to Mona for her excellent editorial work on my story. Thank you. I'm going to read two short excerpts from my story, The Tutor, that's in this issue of Catamaran. The two sections are near the beginning, so everything should be clear. Andre is an 8th grader who gets straight A's. During their first session, Alison quickly discerns that he doesn't need help with his homework and she opts for more creative lessons. Andre is game. He wants to write a letter to the editor of the San Francisco Chronicle and shows her a fiery first draft. The letter focuses on how all this hullabaloo about Russian interference in the election is distracting from the atrocities Putin inflicts on Russian LGBT people. In the letter, Andre describes himself as Russian, although Alison knows both Jacob and Andre are third-generation Russian Americans. Even Svetlana doesn't have an accent, a detail Alison finds disappointing and vaguely inconsiderate. Alison questions Andre if it's appropriate to describe himself as Russian when he's lived in San Francisco his entire life. That's not the point, he says. I'm fluent in Russian, and my brother is gay. This last statement, news to Alison. She drops her interrogation about national identity and concludes their lesson by having Andre write out Bannon is an asshole in Cyrillic. She's going to a protest next weekend, and she wants an attention-grabbing sign. As she gathers her things, the front door opens, and an older version of Andre rushes in. He wraps his arms around Alison and draws her close. She smells a mixture of sweat and musky cologne. I sped all the way here. Jacob holds her at arm's length and examines her frantically, as if he's trying to memorize all her physical details before she disappears. Sveti told me you're only with Andre on Mondays. I didn't want to wait another week before seeing you. Here, Jacob rolls his eyes toward his little brother. Alison used to work with me twice a week. That's because you're twice as dumb, Andre says. He grabs her hand and holds it between his own. Tiny raven's claws are forming at the corners of his eyes, but besides this, Jacob is a logical, older version of the boy Alison taught. His boyhood cuteness has witnessed its full potential. So, Alison says, are you still training to be the next Rafael Nadal? Nah, I gave that up a long time ago. I still play a little, late-night indulgences mostly. He lets go of her hand. To Alison's surprise, she feels disappointed. She says, well, it's great seeing you. I'd love to catch up. That's why I sped 3 red lights and broke 3 red lights driving here. I have an idea, about my future, my life. I was hoping we could get together and talk. She nods and a warm glow fills her. It's been a long time since anyone has asked her advice about anything besides wine pairings and different varieties of organic quail. Awesome. What about next Monday night? After you're finished with Andre, maybe we could get drinks. Or would that be weird? It might. Alison pulls on her coat and is suddenly conscious of the small tear under the left armpit. But let's see how it goes. Until then, can you give me a brief preview? A 30-second overview of your life the past 10 years. He says, I'm a crazy person now. She thought Jacob was joking, but the next morning Svetlana calls Alison and invites her to brunch. An hour later, Svetlana arrives in a cream-colored Mercedes-Benz and drives Alison to the Hotel Vitali. There, she fills in the details. When Alison last saw Jacob, his 15-year-old brain had obsessively focused on 2 things, his grades and tennis. Svetlana tells Alison that during his senior year of high school, after Alison stopped working with him, Jacob accused his tennis coach of sexually molesting him. He later retracted the accusation. He graduated valedictorian thanks in part to Alison, Svetlana acknowledges, went to San Francisco State, and dropped out his sophomore year. Shortly after, Jacob met Kyle, who became his boyfriend, and then meandered through a series of eclectic, low-paying jobs. Floral assistant, car wash attendant, masseur. Svetlana flicks her wrist in dismissive gesture when she mentions the last one. 3 years ago, Jacob was fired from an admin job at a health insurance company after he took scissors to his coworker's cell phone charger. He assembled the cut-up pieces in the formation of Stonehenge on the woman's desk. A security guard escorted him from the building. Later that night, Kyle came home and found Jacob curled in a fetal position in front of the bathroom, talking to aliens. Before completely cutting ties with Jacob, Kyle told Svetlana that Jacob hadn't slept at all for 3 days. Jacob moved home with Svetlana and Andre, and it took an entire year, 6 different psychologists and 3 psychiatrists, before Jacob was well enough to live on his own. Svetlana now pays for his 1 bedroom in the Castro. It's more expensive than his tuition was, she says between sips of a Bloody Mary, but at least I know he's here and well. For now. Svetlana could have been describing a stranger. The reckless impulsivity of Jacob's recent years didn't at all connect with the thoughtful, measured, often quiet student Alison remembers. Svetlana says, I'm constantly worried. Every time he won't stop talking, says strange things, things that make no sense, misses 2 days of work in a row. I wonder if it's the first step in a relapse. She clings her glass against Alison's. Thank you for coming back. Those years you taught Jacob, well, that was the last time he was healthy. You remind me of the time when I had a healthy little boy. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Chad. That was great. Our next reader is Vinnie Hansen. The day after her small town graduation, Vinnie Hansen fled the howling winds of South Dakota and headed for the California coast. There, the subversive clutches of college dragged her into the insanity of writing, where the influences of Sue Grafton and Marcia Miller coaxed Hansen to a life of crime. A two-time Killer Nashville Claymore Award finalist, she's the author of the Carol Sabala Mystery Series, the novel Low Start Street, and numerous short stories. Hansen lives in Santa Cruz with her husband and the requisite cat. So please welcome Vinnie Hansen. She's connecting. Here she is.
All right. Yes, here I am. Okay, my piece in Catamaran Geography Lessons is composed of 4 parts, each a significant road trip from my youth, paving the way for this last one, which is my trip to California. So 1972. My 4th road trip was an escape. It was the day after high school graduation. I'd partied the night before, ending up in a 57 Chevy with 2 boys, one who had a crush on me and one I'd had a crush on since middle school. They flipped a coin to decide who got to make a move. The guy I'd crushed on for 4 years won the toss. We threw a sleeping bag on the ground. The dam of my desire broke. He swam in it like a minnow. In the morning, I packed up the old forest green woody panel wagon I'd bought from Grandpa Coyle. I'd worked full-time my senior year, not only purchasing this vehicle, but also paying for an exchange program to spend the summer in Switzerland. Before Europe, though, I was off to California to check out a modeling school in San Francisco, about which I knew nothing beyond what fit in the advertisement in the back of Teen Beat. Such were the nebulous threads to my future. I packed blankets, clothes, and one of Daddy's beat-up heavy-duty ice chests. Mama wrapped up some roast beef sandwiches for me. And at the last minute, I also packed Bruce Coyle. I'd known him since first grade. We'd always gotten along without ever actually becoming friends. Although there was nothing wrong with him, Bruce was smart, fairly nice, reasonably good looking, and had played on our basketball team that went all the way to the state championships. Bruce decided that morning after graduation that he would like an adventure too. And it was his grandpa's car, even if I now owned it. I could use help with the driving, and some company might not be a bad idea. Both of us were skeptical about crossing the Rockies in the old car, so we headed south on I-25, planning to make a big loop. Plus, this meant we could spend our first night at my sister Ned's house in Colorado Springs. Not that any of this was communicated to her. When Bruce and I pulled into her yard, she came out, astonished, and said they were getting ready to eat supper. "Oh, we don't need supper," I said. "Mama packed us roast beef sandwiches." Nuds opened the ice chest, and she waved her hand in front of her nose. "Where's the ice?" I thought that this type of ice chest automatically kept things cool. Like a caterpillar, my dream dangled from spun silk and floated on youth and ignorance that kept me from dangling in doubts and fears. The next morning, Bruce and I braved onward, burning oil by the quart, down to Albuquerque and then west. We started to climb. "I thought the desert was flat," I said. Bruce shrugged. What could we do? Certainly not turn back. Black smoke spewed behind us as we labored upward, entering the no man's land between Winslow and Flagstaff. The front end clunked. That could not be good. Fresh scented ponderosa pines rose beside the road, the temperature still cold in mid-May. Ahead of us loomed mountains covered with snow. I was getting another geography lesson. Under my death grip, the steering wheel shimmied. I drove on. Bruce sat upright and tense against the passenger window. Outside of Flagstaff, the Woody banged to a halt. Bruce and I climbed out of the car into frigid air. Who thought to bring jackets? We were headed to California. We wrapped ourselves in blankets and stuck out our thumbs. Now, hopefully you'll pick up a catamaran to find out what happens on my way to California. And thank you to Catamaran for this opportunity.
Yeah, it's okay. It's longer, but it's okay.
Thank you so much, Vinnie. Yes, please do get the missing so you can find out what happens. Our next reader is Andrew Fague. Andrew Fague's poems have appeared in Catamaran, Windfall, Chicago Quarterly Review, Frenzy, Porter Gulch Review, and elsewhere. For 18 years, he has taught writing, literature, mythology, and poetry workshops at various colleges on the West Coast. Currently at Cabrillo College, he lives with his family in the Santa Cruz Mountains. He's also a contributing editor to Catamaran. Please welcome Andy Fague.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Everybody hear me okay? Probably. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, everyone working so hard at Catamaran, and everyone who's here with us tonight celebrating art. And wanted to start with a poem that I wrote while evacuated by the CZU lightning complex fire. And so many of us have been affected by around here. I was, well, we were all watching these satellite images of the little red dots that represent the active fires going through the Santa Cruz Mountains. And we watched them kind of gather and then start to kind of surround our neighborhood. And then suddenly there's one in our neighborhood. But at the same time, we were receiving updates from our neighbors who had stayed back to protect the neighborhood and sleeping in shifts and patrol mulling and putting out sapphire, and later on cleaned out our fridge because it was going to become a biohazard from being without power for so long. And it's just incredibly and deeply moving experience, just to feel this connection. We just moved up there in April, and just a new consciousness for me, and something that feels just really old at the same time. So this poem is called "A Quality to This Burning." The lightning storm was mad in more ways than we've denoted. Thunderbolts thrown, registered, thousands of acres first whirring in the winds, lashing the leashed trees. Fissures of light, blinding, then gone. Faint droplets in the pre-dawn, and the stiff, dead wildflowers. The smoke not yet risen. Sirens from a bad night looking for your address, for your pillow top, the electricity you were born into, the fantasies written in on your Wi-Fi, your new shoes and security system ready to fuel skyscrapers of flame, huge combusting enterprises. If there is a quality to this burning, it was here before these tragedies. Family and friends were anywhere. You couldn't not be home. There was nowhere to go, bearing witness to a dawn. And then, so fire and dawn, sort of a transitional setting, is also sort of appropriate for the poem we have in this beautiful issue. And if you look that up in the dictionary, it'll tell you raveling is sort of spinning into something, and unraveling is spinning out of it. But if you've ever read, if anybody's ever read Tom Robbins' Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas, then you've been told numerous times that raveling and unraveling are the same. They mean the same thing. And then there's also a noun form of the word that is a thread that's fallen from the fabric. So this is called raveling. And it's about a dahlia in my backyard. Orange, lacy curtain dahlia, why are you leaning away from the other pretty heads? Why bend over backward to stare due north? Some other solar system sun? Seriously, did you consider your need for vitamin D before you chose the view, a still point in the dark? What if we all pretended we just fell off a comet like you, embellished scout, sent from the beginning, when nothing made sense? Thanks again, everyone, for being here.
Wow, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking an experience like that fire and putting it into poetry.
Yeah.
Sharing it with us. Our next reader is Margaret Chula. Margaret Chula has published 11 collections of poetry, including most recently One Last Scherzo. She has grants from the Oregon Arts Commission, and the Regional Arts and Culture Council have supported her work, as well as fellowships to the Vermont Studio Center, the Helen Wurlitzer Foundation, and Playa. Chula has been a featured speaker and workshop leader at writers' conferences throughout the United States, as well as in Poland, Peru, Canada, and Japan. She has also served as president of the Tonka Society of America and as poet laureate for Friends of Chamber Music. After living in Kyoto, Japan for 12 years, she now makes her home in Portland, Oregon. So please welcome Margaret Chula.
Yes, here we are in Portland, Oregon, a cold, drizzly winter evening, a perfect evening for poetry and fiction reading. Thank you so much, Catherine and Elizabeth, for herding us fiction and poetry cats and navigating through Crowdcast. Really appreciate all your help. So first of all, I have to apologize to Deborah Landau. I used a title from a line in her poem, and I mentioned her as an epigraph, but I spelled her name wrong. I don't know, hopefully somebody at Catamaran caught it, but it's Deborah Landau, Landau. The poem is, "That summer, there was no girl left in me. I spent my days outdoors playing with Harold and Billy and Jimmy, shot bows and arrows with knife-sharpened tips, swung on a rope into the river, even though I couldn't swim. Couldn't was not a word I knew. Shouldn't came from my mother's world, full of dread for her husband, who jumped off the Turner's Falls Bridge on a dare, boasting afterwards, like I did that summer's day, to my sister, who was combing out the tangles in her doll's hair. She handed me a brush, not hers, never hers, to tidy my hair, reeking of river. When I peeled off my pedal pushers, Mother counted the bruises on knees, elbows, ankles, and led me to the tub. Clawfoot, like the paws of rabbits, dogs, wolves that I longed to pet, even as Mother handed me the smooth washcloth and a bar of cashmere bouquet soap. And the next poem is from my book, Daffodils at Twilight, a recent book. And it's the last poem in the collection. And this will bring us back to a lovely summer's day in the garden. Vespers. This is how I end my day. Hands clasped around a hose, sinuous as a serpent. An arc of water forms a halo from the lingering light, a font of absolution in my chapel of roses, lavender, hydrangeas. It raises up lowly, hidden things, crouched all day beneath the darkness of leaves, slugs, snails, mosquitoes, and a triumvirate of moths, white and ethereal as the Holy Ghost. Tomato plants droop from the burden of their fruit. Raspberry vines twist and turn toward the sun, embed their thorns in my hands. Lavender, rosemary, and thyme bow down as they are anointed with water. This is how I end my day, with blues and yellows and softening greens, with water tempering the day's dust, with a choir of grosbeaks singing, Amen, Amen. It is so, it is so. Thank you very much. Stay well. Take care of yourselves and others. Bye.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Our next reader is Christina Waters. Christina Waters is a fifth-generation Californian with a PhD in philosophy, a lecturer in the arts at the University of California, Santa Cruz for many years. She currently writes for Bay Area publications, specializing in theater, food, wine, and print media. Author of the memoir Inside the Flame from Parallax Press, Waters is working on a series of mystery thrillers set amid the worlds of opera, biotech, and academia. Please welcome Christina Waters.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catamaran. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to be reading something that I wrote to accompany some what I thought were fascinating images that I discovered by a Swedish photographer. The rest is self-explanatory. It's called Nordic Dreams. The images made by Swedish photographer Per Forsström came to me quite by accident. And with them came a shock of instant recognition. I knew these images from the inside out. They were familiar as a recurring dream. When I first saw his moody, complex Polaroids on social media, I was already inside the memories they seemed to contain. His memories and mine. Fleeting figures of beachcombers, fuzzy with the distance of time and space, sparkling waves, yellow and magenta babies and toys haunted these photographs. Many moments of light, many times of day, all seemed layered in impossible multiple exposures, infused with a top note of recollection. Forsström's ocean is many thousands of miles away from my Pacific. The intricate Swedish coastline along the Baltic Sea specializes in wide ribbons of sand and languid horizons of blue water. Caressing a jigsaw of rocky coves and islands, these northern waters seem to purr and relax. Yet Forsström's moody images are not pretty photographs in any cliched sense. Filled with light, they implicate shadows. They are framed as much by the Nordic noir of Henning Mankell and Joe Nesbo as they are by the eternal sunlit coves of Ingmar Bergman. Yet the dark perfume of loss seems never far from Forsström's view. Because, like dreams, his images suggest the decay of time. As in dreams, Forsström's work is fueled with seductive alliances between his skilled eye, fate, and the richness of the unconscious. Into these shimmering images, Forsström has conjured irreplaceable days, intimate nevermores, and coaxed them into a single focal plane. It is a magic act, and I don't want to break the spell. I simply want to fall into these images. The technique of double exposure is deliberately confusing. We are seeing either one thing twice or two things simultaneously. This style of image making creates a woozy excitement. Forsström often takes double exposures with a Holga plastic camera, which is an instrument of primitive design with a fixed lens and which allows for multiple images to layer each other. Quote, "I believe I work mostly on intuition," Forsström confessed. "I am not at all interested in creating anything perfect. I'm only interested in capturing the metaphysics I sense at a particular moment in time. It's just a fleeting moment, but also eternal." As with dreams, the soft focus magic of these images eludes our grasp, yet they lull us into some kind of sweet, mad joy. I can gaze on Forsström's images of the sea and lose myself within their folds of time and memory, just as I do when I'm gazing at the ocean itself. The ocean, Rorschach-like, acts upon me as an intimate hallucination. A 12-year-old me is floating out into the surf where my father swims, with long, powerful strokes far out into the waves. The water is alive, wild, and caressing. The feel of the water is immediately familiar, and then it's gone. Like those memories, Forsström's images are never quite what we think we see. They are more and less than we find in them. The beach scenes he captures remind me of my ocean, so distant from the Baltic Sea. On the beach, his beach, my beach, any beach, we can remain forever as we always wish to be. The blinding sunlight, the white sands, the gauzy pastels. We can almost make sense of them, but not quite. Per Forsström's northern lights defy our understanding while they seduce our senses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was beautiful. Our next presenter is Gary Young. Gary Young has published 9 books of poetry and translation. His most recent books are That's What I Thought, Persea Books in 2018, and Precious Mirror by White Pine Press in 2018. His translations of poetry by Kobun Atagawa from the Japanese. That was Precious Mirror. He teaches creative writing and directs the Cowl Press at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Please welcome Gary Young.
Thank you, Catherine. And thank you to all the readers who've come before me. It's a hard act to follow. This has been quite marvelous. I'm going to begin with a short poem by the Tang Dynasty poet Li Bai, which appears in the most recent Catamaran. This poem is called Gazing at Lushan Waterfall. Smoke from incense turns blue in sunlight. The waterfall below hangs like cloth, flowing so far down the mountain, it could be the Milky Way fallen from the sky. And this next poem is a new poem from a book I'm working on currently, American Analects. It's untitled. Each night, an owl cries out from the redwoods. He calls, and I call back. I call, and he answers. We share the same bright moon, the same shadows, and the same fate. The possibility of discussion is limitless. We have no secrets. This morning I discovered an owl pellet by the front door, a wad of fur, and a jumble of femurs and little ribs. Oracle bones, easy to decipher. Thank you.
Oh, that was great, Gary. I got to hear you read twice this week. I also attended the Red Wheelbarrow event. Our next reader is Alison Turner. Alison Turner lives in Los Angeles, California with her husband. Her work has appeared in a number of journals, including Nimrod, Mid-American Review, Poetry East, the American Journal of Poetry, the San Pedro River Review, and in the anthologies California Fire and Water, a Climate Crisis anthology, edited by Molly Fisk, and the best of It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, Volume 1, edited by Julia Ingalls. She is the author of a chapbook, What to Do in an Emergency, published in 2017. Please welcome Alison Turner.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you, Catamaran. I'm really honored to be in such a gorgeous magazine, I have to say. This poem from the magazine is for my late dear friend, Suvala, the artist. The sentence of death changed everything for her. The colors of everything exploded. The tree, for instance, was pure green at its crown, without a nuance of shadow between its leaves. And the street that ran like a river between tall buildings was red. The buildings red too, although some in the distance were yellow. How without effort everything flows into its parts. She felt like a child again. One wave of the brush and the world appeared innocent in a way she had forgotten. What the dead would give for this sunlight, you could almost lean on, but it belongs to her. It is her breath, released on the first world of her making, at which she keeps arriving. It is all about arriving now, in the best available light, in her own golden air. Soon angels, of course, coming around the corner above the red street, their purple wings as dark as she will allow it to get, and this green vine growing as if from within her, is climbing a red wall, lifting to the light, her light, a chrysalis in which blossoms accumulate, their perfect forms ready to be released, icy white upon her world. And this second poem, a short poem from my chapbook, is for those of you up here in Santa Cruz having to deal with the effects of terrible fires, which we know well in Southern California too. No one said it would be easy. Horses standing blindfolded in the surf, dogs sprinting into traffic. At the bottom of a dry swimming pool, a man wrapped in a wet sheet, an operator's voice saying, "Don't hang up." TV, autumn, fire, the smell of air burned through, the peculiar hush ash shares with snow. Cedar, Witch Creek, marble cones, sand, the one seed pried open by heat, the 1 hour or day of pure consequence. What would you save to prove you had a life? Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you for coming from Los Angeles. Our next reader is Tania Martin. Tania Martin teaches art to elementary and middle school students in San Jose, California. She's the co-founder of Flash Fiction Forum, a literary series focusing on short works since 2013. She has been a featured reader at many Bay Area live reading series, including Peninsular Literary, Rolling Writers, Well Read, and Weekend of Words, and her work has been performed by Play on Words numerous times. She's currently working on her first novel.
Hi, thank you, Catherine and Elizabeth. Thanks for having me. I was so delighted to get my copy in the mail today, so I'm going to read out of it. High Anxiety at the Zoo. At the San Francisco Zoo, with my mother and adult daughters, we're pondering the ethics of keeping animals in cages on a damp and gray July afternoon. I like seeing animals in the wild, says one of my daughters, as seagulls circle and cry out above windswept cypress trees. I've always felt a special connection to animals, announces my mother, and her eyes light up with her non sequitur. I think, oh really? Like you have just divulged some characterizing fact about yourself that's been a big secret all of our lives. But then I flash back to our last zoo trip, the Auckland Zoo, about 10 years ago, and an uneasiness creeps over me as I remember that thing she does at zoos. As we approach the first animal enclosure, she walks a little faster, and I feel her eagerness, her barely suppressed glee. "Hello, darlings," she says to the lemurs, waving her hands to get their attention, clicking her tongue, and desperately trying to make eye contact to prove her powers of animal telepathy or zoolingualism. And this is when I launch into my foolish endeavor to stifle her inner Doolittle, because I know she is not above full-on animal mimicry. I want us to appear as a normal family, whatever that is. I can't help myself. I want to derail her circus ring. But normal is not something my mother likes to do, and she will not be deterred from talking to the animals. Not just talking to the animals, but communing with them, because the animals get her in ways that I obviously cannot. Passing people smile at the charming 70-year-old woman who is whistling to the blue-headed macaws, while we wait patiently for the birds to reply. One of the birds finally whistles, and she looks back at me like a small child to see if I've seen her trick. While my daughters laugh with her as she waddles from one foot to the other, cawing and flirting with the penguins, I can feel my blood pressure rising. I realize I'm being uptight, pushing us through the exhibits at an unreasonable rate and reading aloud the information placards to try to distract her or drown her out. And the more I try to restrain her, the more manic she becomes. Later I say, "Mom, I need the toilet," so I can run away from her full-on hooting and hollering when we reach the mandrels. I suppose I worry that people will think she's crazy. I want to tell them she's not just some madcap, red-headed Kiwi character. She's my intelligent, sensitive, and loving bipolar mother. I don't remember the first time I looked around, embarrassed that my mother was clowning to strangers, as if the spotlight was somehow focusing in on me instead. I had always admired those charms until one day I didn't. I take a picture of her with some giraffes in the background, and she stretches her neck out as far as she can, trying to get a laugh out of me. I laugh despite myself. And near the end of our tour, I see an ostrich matching my mother's pace along the fence, and they do appear to be in deep conversation. And for a minute, I have to wonder, what are they talking about? Thank you.
Thank you, Tania. That's great. I'm happy now to introduce Leslie Ullman. Leslie Ullman is the author of 5 previous poetry collections, most recently The You That All Along Has Housed You, and a hybrid book of craft essays and writing exercises, The Library of Small Happiness. Her awards include the Yale Series of Younger Poets, the Iowa Poetry Prize, and the New Mexico-Arizona Book Award. She teaches in the low residency MFA in writing program at Vermont College of the Fine Arts. The poem in our most recent issue is titled after one of over 100 oblique strategies for artists who are stuck, published as a deck of cards in 1975 by composer Brian Eno and artist Peter Schmidt. And it is part of her recently completed manuscript that uses about 70 of the strategies as titles. So please welcome Leslie Ullman.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be part of this, and I will tell you, I wrote all the strategies up, and I had a lot of duds, and I didn't mind. But one of them, Catamaran, was very gracious to publish, so I'll read that one first, and then I'll read one more. I was trying to write a nice note to our last reader, and I realized I couldn't finish it, so I may try to continue later. This strategy, and all these titles are not mine. This is Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt. Use an unacceptable color. Puce, chartreuse. Magenta, the shade of raw beef left in the sun. The auroras, borealis and australis, seething with combustion, carried into mankind's sliver of sight by solar wind that riles oxygen atoms into plasma, magnetospheric, violet, red, blue, bruised blue, iterations of green. Photographs reveal improbable neon curtains, streamers, rays, fire over ice, earth and sun fusing their atmospheres in a wash of charged particles that crest into chorus wave over polar caps where few humans dwell, huddled against relentless white. Astronomers say yellow-green is the most common color of sickness in the liver, color that suits few complexions, color to get out of bed for in regions where the sun barely peers over the horizon in midwinter. Miracle one could pass a hand through, if one could reach into such unthinkable solitude. And the second one is another oblique strategy. It says, the title is Faced with a Choice, Do Both. I wish I was dead, a friend mumbled on the chairlift a month after his wife died. Mumbled so low I wasn't sure I heard. After I asked how he planned to spend his winter. Dead, his voice, the sear, cauterized small talk, his abyss now mine. I had never heard this in a voice before, utterance from the realm of endings. I touched his arm, feeling the chill slice me, bind me, and then we skied down that sparkling mountain, dead, dead, as we carved our turns from the habit of living. Dead, a curtain I suddenly could not part. Vacuum I could never again dismiss. Dead, the two of us, savoring our skills even then. Because what else could we do as our skis caressed from memory the loved terrain and bright snow, sunlight touching us, dying all over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leslie. That was beautiful. Thank you. Our next reader is Daly Walker. Daly Walker is a retired surgeon. His fiction has appeared in numerous literary publications, including the Sewanee Review, the Louisville Review, the Southampton Review, Catamaran previously, the Saturday Evening Post, and the Atlantic. His work has been shortlisted for the Best American Short Stories and an O. Henry Award. His collection of stories, called Surgeon Stories, was published by Fleur-de-Lis Press in 2011. He divides his time between Boca Grande, Florida, and Quechee, Vermont. He teaches a fiction writing workshop in the summer program of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Dartmouth College. Please welcome Daly Walker.
Thank you, Catherine. Greetings from Florida, where it's past my bedtime. And congratulations to Elizabeth and Catherine on another remarkable edition of Catamaran. I believe under their leadership, it's become one of the premier literary reviews in America. I'm quite pleased to have another story appear in it. So now I'll read to you from my short story, Bobolinks. On a summer morning when fog laid over the land and the coronavirus was raging around the world, Wayne Wilson started up a trail that led to a pond on a mountain in Vermont. Tall, fit, and straight as the white pines that lined the path, the retired surgeon was nearly handsome in spite of a scar on his cheek where a basal cell had been removed. Hot, dense breath filled his cloth face mask. Flies formed around a heap of horse manure left on an early morning trail ride. In his hand was a hickory walking stick he'd carved himself, and in his chest he could feel the weight of his heart, an unrelenting heaviness. The last time he had made this hike was a few months before with Laura, his lover for the last 3 years. On that climb up the mountain, Laura said, "I want to marry as soon as we can. Will you promise never to leave me?" "I promise," Wayne had said, hugging her. Shortly after that, she had texted him and told him that she was changing his life and wouldn't be seeing him again. In disbelief, Wayne had called her in a cold and distant voice. He had never heard from her before. She said the man she was now with was a jealous type, and that if Wayne contacted her again, he would cause him trouble. Her words put a knife in Wayne's gut, and ever since he had been immensely sad and humiliated. He was going through a couple bottles of scotch every week. He let his coarse gray hair go long, and he seldom shaved. Weeds had taken over his vegetable garden. He no longer went to the gym to lift weights or to grand rounds at the hospital. His bird feeders hung on the poles, empty of seeds. The trail steepened. Wayne's legs began to tire. To catch his breath, he paused and leaned on his walking stick, sucking in air. His damp shirt clung to his chest. The rapid beating of his heart worried him. Was it atrial fibrillation or just a sign of tachycardia? Could he have that goddamn coronavirus? He felt his forehead for fever and found one. While he waited for his pulse to slow and his oxygen level to rise, his mind sorted through all the trials he and Laura had gone through together. The end of his career in medicine, the death of Laura's abusive mother, Wayne's wife in the nursing home descending deeper into dementia. Although he didn't believe in a God who intervened in the lives of individuals, he said a silent prayer that Laura would come back to him someday. He ended his prayer by asking the Lord to watch over his wife. 4 girls in denim shorts and sorority t-shirts came toward him on the path, laughing and listening to their phones with earbuds. When he saw they were maskless, Wayne stepped off the trail into a bed of ferns to distance himself from them. Before he'd gone to college, he joined the Marine Corps and spent a year as a medic with a reconnaissance battalion in Vietnam. He thought if he could make that sacrifice, these spoiled rats could wear a mask for a few hours each day. You're nothing but selfish, he mumbled into his mask. I'm an old man who could die if I got this friggin' virus. Show some respect. Wayne continued on up the mountain, thinking of himself as Sisyphus, his rock, a heavy heart, and the world's indifference. When he came to the pond, the trail leveled off, and Wayne's breathing became less labored. On the shore, he found the same split log bench he and Laura had sat together on not so long ago. For a while, he sat thinking, staring out at the dark green water. He watched the silver trout slither by near the shore and devour an insect. He retrieved a granola bar from his pocket. He took a bite. The taste of honey and almonds revived the memory of he and Laura sharing the same flavors and a kiss on this very bench. He shook his head and wished he'd brought a flask with him, something to deaden the pain. So I'll end it there. If you want to find out about the bottlenecks, buy the Catamaran and read the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Daly Walker, and thank you for joining us late at night on the East Coast to be with us on the West Coast. Thank you. And our next reader is Alan Soldofsky. Alan Soldofsky's most recent collection of poems, In the Buddha Factory, by Truman State University Press in 2013. With David Cohen, he's the co-editor of Compendium, a collection of thoughts on prosody by Donald Justice by Omnidon. His poetry has 4 times been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. He has published poems and critical essays in numerous magazines and journals, including recently the Gettysburg Review, Gigantic Sequins, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and William Carlos Williams Review. His interview with Juan Felipe Herrera, the U.S. Poet Laureate 2015 to 2017, appeared in the summer 2018 issue of Melis. He directs the MFA in Creative Writing program at San Jose State University. Please welcome Alan Soldofsky.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks to all the good folks at Catamaran for inviting me to this event and for publishing a poem called Urgent in issue number 31. So I'll start reading with that poem. I noticed looking at it in the magazine today, its feel seems to have changed post-pandemic. See what you think. Urgent. Light scraped up from the beach on the other side of the mountain, air thick with particles, pointillism through a tinted windshield. Driving west, I squint through sunbeams. It's the end of vacation, and I do not like it. Last night, the full moon was orange with all the smoke. We expected it to be blue. I want to get lost at each turnoff, but can't. I have to get back to the usual lack of privacy. I should take the shortest way home. Instead, we drive up switchbacks over a dry pass, dusk fading too early behind us. It's picturesque, but something's lurking on the horizon. I don't want to know what's coming as we steer back toward the coast. When I'm gone too long, it nags me not to be home, though I still want to be someplace else where the trees are different. The breeze here is too familiar, too Mediterranean, though that's not where I am. Are other lives so circumscribed by time and distance? I can't say what seems so urgent. The smell of heat after dark, grass giving off its last withered scent. I'm not sure where we are, but it seems the few restaurants that are here are closed. Pump jacks, like strange birds, bow to themselves near the roadside, fenced off in the glare of sodium vapor lamps as a shooting star streaks over the dim one-way street we're driving on. That last image is actually from San Ardo, California. Place Gary Young knows, I think. This next poem and last poem is called Entitled, and it's going to be published this spring in the Vox Populi blog. Entitled. You know it's hard to concentrate when pear trees across the street burst out overnight, flaunting their astonishing plumes of white confetti. Somehow, stakes are higher as days lengthen and winter surges through its last cycle. I feel the pressure pushing down on me. In the mail, there's a brochure about planning your own funeral. Who does that? On the walkway, a mat of blossoms. When I look into the agility of the air, I see what brings life to life, as though entitled to sprout wherever it wants. Shouldn't I be entitled to an extra day that doesn't appear on the calendar? A moment to be in the moment. Down William Street, the wind, flowers, a turbulence roiling the branches, leaving a trail of debris against the curb. Hieroglyphs scoured into layers of mud. Last week's rain hasn't dislodged. Indecipherable, as handwriting smeared in the margins of a page, torn from a book that's been lost. Thank you, everyone. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, Alan. Happy Hanukkah. I'd like now to introduce Mala Gaonkar. I hope I'm not mangling your last name. Mala spent her childhood summers at her grandmother's cashew farm near Goa, India. meeting some of the characters who inspired the story that's in our new issue, and others. The rest of her free time was spent reading tattered copies of Indian folktale cartoons. A technology analyst, she co-founded Sergo, a public health foundation focused on using data science to aid government public health projects. Please welcome Mala. I hope Mala is here. I love this story. It looks like Catherine is trying to get Mala on screen. It's been great seeing all the comments during this reading. Yeah.
Hello? Oh, sorry about that delay.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everybody, Catamaran, for everyone listening. I realize it's quite late, so I'll just read the first section of the story, which was background of which was described in my little bio. The new maid. The old maid was there at the beginning when Layla moved into her grandmother's house at 16. The old maid was like a mother, but a quiet, nearly forgotten one who does the laundry and the cooking, fading into the kitchen pantry. The old maid was trapped in the black and white photos you see of the old India, villages of gaunt men and women with eyes blank as bullocks. Pictures from the crumpled old foreign magazines that only silverfish visit in the corner of discarded houses. In the snapshot she sometimes showed Layla, the only one she had with her children, the old maid looked very young. She remembers the careful, delicate pleats of the worn cotton saris and how the old maid smiled with big, beautiful teeth. How the old maid thoughtfully said nothing when she came up to hang the wet clothes on the roof and found Layla there weeping, for reasons Layla herself then barely understood. Instead, the old maid called Layla pretty, even though Layla had hairy arms and a balky gait. The old maid pushed the dust into the corners so it could not be seen until the winds blew through. Then one day, in just as mysterious a story as her origin, the old maid went away. The new maid is the same age as Layla, but she seems more like an older sister. Layla's watchful around her. The new maid cannot be ignored. She's everywhere, both in a house new to her and with the other denizens of their quiet neighborhood lane. The new maid wears garish bright colors, as if she wishes to be noticed. Her clothes are of shiny and cheap polyester. Fast fashion in more ways than one, grumbles the neighbor, Mrs. Gilliputty, when she plays bridge with Layla's grandmother. The new maid serving tea to the four old ladies hunched over their cards. The new maid, uncaring of opinion, chats to her grandmother, to Layla, to the maids in the lane, and the secretary at the architect's office down the road, even the shopkeepers. She's not shy. She's a way with numbers and helps with the counting of savings, cards, sums, whether it is asked for or not. The old maid left to the overnight rail. The old maid told Layla of her village, speaking only in Kannada. We are fishmongers on land between sky and ocean. We are growing bitter gourds and greens, mixing old tea leaves into the dust. I'm getting the tea from rich people's garbage only. On her journey home, the old maid would have pulled her sari palu over her head so strangers would not wonder about her. She'd have pretended to sleep for 6 hours, not even getting up for tea or the toilet. Her grandmother, Mrs. Kilpuddy, didn't speak at all of the old maid after she left. Layla, a curious yet solitary girl who happily eavesdropped on every conversation in the house when she could, had to ask her grandmother what had happened to the old maid. The old lady said that some stories were too sad for the young. Layla thought, we rich talk of ourselves, the poor of prices, listening to their throaty voices, frogs croaking at the edge of a monsoon pond. Eventually, from Mrs. Kilpuddy's maid, Layla heard that the old maid was sent away when she started coughing, and when specks of blood were found in the pillowcases so discreetly hung on the roof. It pays to check on your servants, her grandmother said. A problem with the husband drinking himself to death, too. The new maid's family paid for the more expensive day train, so she would be safe from groping men. She also came from the sea, but her village sounds different. Inland from the sea, there are paddy farms and soft breezes, fields flowing like green Benares silk, like the saris worn by the Bala ladies, your grandmother's family. They own all the farms. Such talk of silk from a girl who never worn it. Who would not place Benares on a map? And yet the new maid shows Layla how she has sewn 50 rupees into the hem of her blouse, had packed aspirin, a small vial of ghee cheaply bought at a temple store, salt, tea, a dried roti, an onion, a sliver of soap, small loops of black and white cotton, matches, an old plastic bottle she could fill up with clean water at the public taps, her compass, her pencils, some paper in which she had drawn arcs in the intricate gopura of dream temples. The new maid told her how she had wandered into the second-class cars where a mother was pulling out small cut sandwiches and boiled eggs wrapped like rubies for her 2 scrubbed children. That such a woman existed, who could pack tiffin carriers like skyscrapers filled with fresh samosas. The new maid wished she could record this sight as one would a beloved Bollywood scene. Thank you, everybody. Stay well.
Thank you, Mala. That was beautiful. Thank you. All right. We are now at the last reader. Our grand finale tonight is Charles Hood. Charles Hood is a frequent contributor to Catamaran. Actually, I think he's our most frequent contributor with this essay. His world mammal list currently rests at 912 species. The most recent addition was a Guadalupe fur seal seen during a whale watching trip out of Moss Landing, California. Okay, I was there.
And it looked like every other seal, didn't it, Catherine? It just like this stump thing in the water. I'm like, oh my God, it's from Mexico. It's a Guadalupe fur seal. Oh my God, stop the boat.
Elizabeth Mackenzie was there too. And we were like, why is he freaking out? It's just like a seal. It turns out it's one of the most rare mammals that even the top mammal guy doesn't have on his list.
Right. Yes, that is true. Yes, it moved me up in the rankings.
They live in a cave.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And we saw, so Catamaran is your good luck charm for sure. And this essay that he's going to read from tonight is going to be part of an essay collection coming out from Heyday Books in 2021. I'm really looking forward to that. Heyday makes beautiful books, and I love that they're publishing some of your Catamaran essays.
Really, the book should be called, The Catamaran Reader as a subtitle, because half of the book appeared on your pages. The book is going to be called A Salad Only the Devil Would Eat, The Hidden Joys of Ugly Nature.
Okay.
Although this one's actually about pretty nature, the little piece in Catamaran. So I wrote the essay in Catamaran with the whales. That's really long. So I'm just only going to read the prepositions so we can get through in time. No, I'm just going to read a few paragraphs out of order.
Let me let you take it away. Okay.
All right. We're on a boat. We're left Monterey Bay. This is nonfiction. This is what happened. And I've just isolated some paragraphs just to make a little piece quick. Enough flim-flam and lollygagging. Monterey Bay Aquarium and Pacific Grove cypress trees are on our left. and the open sea calls as the boat noses into the thickening swell, and impossible egrets walk delicately on kelp mats, Jesus in white looking for crabs. As we head out, the outflow of seabirds paces us, undulating lines of surf scotters, skeins of pelagic cormorants, hundreds of penguin-colored common murres. All the morning birds are heading seaward, agreeing with our choice of direction, even if motivated by different hungers. Oh, shit! None of us is ready when the first whale of the day shows up, a probable humpback, half a mile out past 1 o'clock. We chase it but never catch up. In theory, one can ID whales to species by using the height and shape of the blows, but most spouts only hang in place half a minute before dissolving into mist and longing. I try not to get distracted by the too distant gulls, by the bobbing white floats marking prawn pots, by the urgent question of whether or not it's too early in the day to eat my first sandwich. Tricky thing, the ocean, a deceit show of shifts and blurs, nothing is ever as it seems. Fronds of kelp wave like sea turtle flippers. Plastic bags look like jellies, and jellies look like plastic bags. A gang of porpoising sea lions breaks the surface with the same sleek torpedoing motion as a pod of the larger, much more rare northern right whale dolphin. What's that? Oh, never mind. Everybody wants to help spot. Nobody wants to be the first duffer to raise a false alarm. What color is the ocean? Snot green, says James Joyce. Yet it's equally true to admit that when the sun opens a slit in the clouds like a silver letter opener, the water shines brighter than abalone. The amount of open water wind travels across is called fetch. Fetch plus wind speed allows one to guesstimate swell, which generally builds over longer distances. Rogue waves defy simple averages, and buoys verify there can be 75-footers in the right or wrong conditions. Names for the sea, if you are an Anglo-Saxon poet: Seal Bath, Sky Mirror, Seal Bath, Fish Home, Whale Road. My name's Pearl Hoarder, Swell Pusher, Sky Mirror, Joy Giver. To knock off barnacles may be one reason humpbacks shoot up tall, crash down hard. The barnacle is not a parasite. It does not feed directly on the whale's body, but the collective weight and friction of the barnacles creates significant drag. And for the same reason that Navy ships need to be dry docked, sandblasted clean, recoated with a new layer of anti-fouling paint, so too do some whales need to reduce the amount of scrubby, crusty protrusions. They're schlepping along all day and night, up ocean and down. Erupting out of the water and smashing back down could be a way to do this. Or then again, maybe that's not the main reason. Maybe it just feels good. Maybe it's a way to show off to the other whales. Yeehaw! Look at me! Maybe it's a simple text message. 2 splashes and a tail wag tells the other whales, hey guys, wait up! Maybe it's something sexual, boa flirty and erotic. Maybe it's a warning. Look, you pesky shark, back off or I'll squish you like a bug. Blue whales can breach too, and gray whales can spy hop. But to get the full whale show, one needs to find a group of in-the-mood humpbacks. In California, in summer, that's usually not hard. Once on a trip from Half Moon Bay to the Farallon Islands and back, I kept track of every single whale I could see. It was a calm day, and by sundown, I had counted 6 blue whales, 2 fin whales, 2,000 Rizzo's dolphins, and 88 different humpbacks. Sometimes a whale launches out of the water so close to the boat, you get hit by the splash when it comes back down. That can unnerve people, exhilarating yet intimidating, since you suddenly realize the boat itself is only upright and not smashed in two because the whale has decided to leave it alone. Humpbacks, or as long as the boat, and other whales even bigger, humans are at the top of the chain of all the other animals until we are not. Just under the surface, blue whales look not just blue, but electric turquoise. Fin whales are nearly as long, but mostly look 50 shades of sleek gray. And that is one way to tell the two species apart. The blue whale also has a small fin, small in relation to the whale itself, shoved way back down by the back of near the tail, almost as an afterthought, while a fin whale's dorsal fin is larger and closer to midships. You can hear the blow from a fair distance off as the plume of warm, wet breath condensing in the cool air. A blue whale's blow can geyser 35 feet. And if the light catches it just so, it shines rainbow iridescent. If the boat motors through the spray, it smells fishy. This trip today has already been brilliant, quote unquote, as my British friends would say. And just when I think the day can't get any better, the captain lines us up parallel to a swimming blue whale, switches off the engines, letting the momentum carry us forward. Silence and whale breath and silence and the slap of water against the hull and silence and whale. And there's hardly any barrier between us at all. No throbbing engines, no exhaust fumes, no attempt to turn the boat left or right to keep up. Just water and whales, and I am happy, truly and deeply happy. Namaste. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Charles. Wow. Thank you for taking us out onto the ocean for the grand finale. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. This has been a whirlwind evening, and it's just, I'm so impressed with everyone's readings tonight. Everyone was just spectacular.
Fantastic.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right, well, yeah. I mean, it couldn't have been any better. This was one of our best readings. So much talent all in one place like this. And thank you for all the people who came, almost 197. And I just want to wish you guys a happy holiday and keep reading, keep writing.
Thanks to everybody. It was fabulous.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
I'm still watching you. See, look. Listen, you see your past? Look, I was watching you.
Oh.
I was like 10 seconds behind.